Today we're doing things a little bit different. You know, we've just finished Thanksgiving, and we're leaving a Thanksgiving season and now moving to a season of generosity, a season of giving ourselves away. And I hope that you had an amazing Thanksgiving. I hope you had an incredible time with family and friends. But now as we move forward and we transition, we look at things a little differently. And last week we talked about, as we wrapped up our series on vision, we talked about a vision for giving, that we get to give. And we talked about 4 very simple things that we need to learn. I want to take you back to them real quickly. And then I want to transition us to a very special time today. Last week we talked about the fact that we have to look beyond ourselves. You know, vision is about seeing. It's about seeing our lives. It's about seeing opportunities. It's about seeing people. It's about seeing. And that begins with a transformative process of our minds, changing the way we think and therefore what we see. And the truth is that all of us during this season need to look beyond ourselves. It's easy to get selfish. It's easy to get inwardly focused. It's easy to make it all about me. But we have to look beyond me. We have to look beyond ourselves. Second, we have to care beyond ourselves. You know, we live in a world today that I'm not sure people care so much for each other anymore. Right? I mean, we just don't seem to care very much. Care enough to reach out. Care enough to be patient. Care enough to give people the benefit as opposed to attacking them. We live in a very angry world, don't we? But God has called us to be a caring people, to care about each other, to care about our world. And in order to do that, we have to look beyond ourselves and therefore be able to care beyond ourselves. Thirdly, we were challenged to give beyond ourselves. God has called you and I to be a giving people, to be a generous people, to be a caring people, to give ourselves, not just our resources, but our time, our talents, our treasures, all aspects of ourselves. Some of us are really good at giving certain slots of our life, but that total life of giving is difficult for us because we've been taught to keep, to hoard, to take instead of to give. But we need to learn to give beyond ourselves. One of the great resources, it's been around forever. I probably read this book a dozen times, but I really want to encourage you. Pick this up, go online, or we have it at all of our Gear Up locations. It's called the Treasure Principle. It's the idea of storing treasures up in the permanent as opposed to the temporary. I encourage you to pick up a copy. You'll read it in one sitting. It'll challenge you. It'll grow you. It'll help you understand what it means to live a life that gives and is generous. See, because God has called us to give beyond ourselves. And then lastly, to serve beyond yourself. Again, we've lost the idea of serving each other. We feel like we deserve it, right? Man, I hope that you understand that you get to be a part of other people's lives and you get to serve them. In what ways are you being served? That's sure something we need to acknowledge, but in what ways are you serving other people? When you came into all of our campuses today, you received one of these little cards. You're probably sitting on it, right? It's just one way to serve. Coming up at Mahaffey on Christmas Eve and Christmas Eve, we'll be celebrating with 14,000 people. And that doesn't just happen. That happens because people give, because people serve, because people care, and because people see. Somebody asked me recently, why do you do this thing at the Mahaffey every year? And I said, it's our gift to the community. It's a way we can give Christmas to our city. And so we go and we give and we sacrifice. Your staff works long hours and gives up their Christmas and doesn't get really to enjoy it until it's all over. But they do it because they look beyond themselves, because they care beyond themselves, because they give beyond themselves, and therefore they serve beyond themselves. So we're entering a season of gratitude, a season, or exiting a season of gratitude and giving to a season of generosity. You know, gratitude and generosity go hand in hand. right? And there are two aspects of that. One that's really easy for us to process, and that is that when people are generous to us, we're grateful, right? Somebody does something good for you, and you're grateful. Somebody buys you a gift, and you're thankful for that. Gratitude and generosity go hand in hand, and it's easy to be grateful out of generosity, but it's more difficult to flip those. Generosity inspires gratitude, but does gratitude inspire generosity? When you and I are truly thankful, when we understand how much we have to be thankful for, then it inspires generosity in our lives. And as a matter of fact, I think the more significant generosity comes from people who understand gratitude, who understand how blessed they are, how grateful they are. So as we enter this season, we want to transition to generosity. Now, Thursday, you gathered with your friends and your family, and you ate way too much food, didn't you? Whether it be turkey or ham, or now people are, doing steaks or whatever is your Thanksgiving tradition. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you celebrated. And I hope that you understood how blessed you really are. You see so much that we have so much. And yet, what are we doing with what that is? What are we doing with the many things, the many blessings that we have? I know what we all did post our meal on Thursday. Not all of us, but a lot of us. One, we took a nap, right? Because that's what we have to do because we're in a coma at that point, right? And then what did we do? What did we do next? No, we went shopping. We went to all the things that were open, right? Best Buy, the mall, stores like that. Why? Because it's no longer Black Friday. It's now Black Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Well, Cyber Monday, isn't it? Right? We immediately step from a significant understanding of gratitude to consume. That's what we do. Because we've been taught that. It's not our fault. But yet we live in it. We flesh it out. We all went shopping and we bought things that didn't matter. Why? Because they were cheap. They were on sale. You're not going to believe how much money I saved. You didn't save anything. You spent. But that's what we do, right? As a matter of fact, 7 years ago, a group of people looked at that process, that what was happening in America as we sit down and have a season of Thanksgiving, but then turn around and throw all that out the window and go out and just hoard. And they said, that's wrong. We need to balance with giving. Because we take, we buy. And sometimes it's to give, but a lot of times, Black Friday, Thursday, whatever day you want to call it, has become less about buying gifts at a lower rate so that we can give them away and more about getting all the stuff that we want at a lower rate. Let's be honest about it. And so a group of people decided we're going to balance that. And they came up with an idea and picked a day in the week that kind of was around Black Friday and said, let's set this aside as a day of giving. And it's called Giving Tuesday. It happens this Tuesday. Here's what I want to challenge you to do. I want to challenge you, yes, this Tuesday, but every day, find a way to give yourself away. Especially this Tuesday, as you think about giving something over and above, I would like for you to consider being a part of what God's doing here. But whatever you do, I want to encourage you to give. Why? Because we have been given so much. It's about gratitude. It's about understanding generosity. I was looking up generosity in the dictionary. I love to look at words because we use words, but do we really know what they mean, right? We throw words out and we think we know what they mean. Have you ever had somebody throwing a word out and using it over and over and over again and you're going, that's not what that means, right? And so I always like to look words up. And so I looked up generosity. And I loved all the definitions, but there was one definition that just really hit home to me. And it described or defined generosity as open-handedness. I loved that definition, open-handedness. handedness. And that really hit me close because, as many of you know, I have a disease. It's called Dupuytren's contracture. And what it does is it basically, my body produces scar tissue just because it likes to do that. Your body produces scar tissue because of trauma. My body just produces it. And what it does is it causes your hands to have all this scar tissue along the tendons and in your feet. I have it in my feet, in my hands. And many of you remember my hands used to be really drawn in because that's what it does. It draws your hands in. I can easily go back to the position because for 11 years, my hands were like this. As a matter of fact, that's exactly where they were. Why? Because for 11 years, see, I can go back there real quick. And so for 11 years, my hands would not open. Both hands were constricted. And as a result, I could never open my hands. Now, for me, the biggest frustration about the disease was simply that I couldn't open my hands. See, the things that you take for granted, I couldn't do. Like sticking your hands in your pocket to get some change, I couldn't do it. Getting the keys out of your pocket, I couldn't do it. Shaking somebody's hand, gripping a football or a baseball or a golf club. I couldn't do that because my hands wouldn't open. About a year ago, or a little more than a year ago, I had surgery on this hand, and then I had a procedure on this hand as well. And they opened up. I never got my hands fully back. I mean, only about 80%. And I have ugly hands, but they're my hands. And I can use them. And I remember waking up from the surgery, and the first thing I wanted to know is, can I open my hands? Can I open my hands? See, God has called us to be open-handed people because life closed is so far from what it feels like to be open. As a matter of fact, I want you to do me a favor. Take your hands and grip them in a fist really tight to the point that your fingernails dig into your palms. Grip it tight. Squeeze it. Do it. Squeeze it really, really hard. Now open them. Which one's better? Which one's better? See, God has called us to be open-handed people, to be generous people. But yet we live in a world that teaches us to grab all we can and squeeze it. Buy more, take more. And we've lost what it means to give. But God has called us to be giving people. And in order to do that, we have to look beyond ourselves. We have to care beyond ourselves. We have to give beyond ourselves and serve beyond ourselves. You see, it's really a matter of the heart. It's a matter of opening our hearts. The greatest definition of an open heart is found in John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he opened his heart and he gave his son so that you and I might have life. God has called us to be open-hearted, open-handed people. But see, we're way out of rhythm with that. We've fallen into the pattern of the world, which says take, consume, keep, never give. See, the heart is the core of everything we do. It's all about the heart and trusting that. A number of years ago, I was reading a blog by a young lady who had gone through a heart transplant. I've had the opportunity to walk with two people who had heart transplants. Walk with them through the whole process and actually see them receive a brand new heart because of the generosity of somebody else. By the way, sign your donor card. You don't need it. When you're gone, somebody else needs it. Give them life. I hope they take every part of my body except the Dupuytren's because they don't want that. And I hope they use it to bring life to people. Because of the generosity of others, this young lady had received a new heart, and she began to blog about it. And I began to follow her blog. And one day she wrote these words: because of my heart transplant, I have a desire to do something in return. To do thanks. To give thanks. To give things. To give thoughts. To give love. So gratitude becomes the gift, creating a cycle of giving and receiving. The endless waterfall, filling up and spilling over, Perhaps not even to the giver, but to someone else. To whoever crosses one's path, it is a simple passing on of the gift. See, you have been given what you've been given so you can pass it on, so that you can give it away. God has called us to be people who open our hearts. Open our hearts in service. Open our hearts in love. Open our hearts in giving. Today is about an open heart. When Jesus stepped into the city, knowing that in just a few days he was going to give his life away, he did it freely. He did it with open hands. Jesus could have very easily grabbed a hold and resisted and said, no, I'm going to keep this, because he deserved it. He was God, by the way. But he didn't. He stepped into the city openly, with an open heart, open hands, to give himself away. And we're going to share in a picture that he gave to his disciples. He went to his disciples and says, I know you don't understand this. I don't know you don't get it, because, see, you've bought the lie of the world just as we buy the lie that we have to receive. And they wanted Jesus to do what they wanted him to do, but Jesus came for a different mission, a different purpose. And Jesus shared with them what he was going to do, and they didn't understand. And then Jesus stepped away to pray. And when he prayed, he knelt in the garden and he said these words, Father, not my will, but your will be done. Here's what he was praying. He's saying, Father, I open my heart. I open my heart to you. A number of years ago, I was a student pastor, and I had a young lady in my youth group. She was a very fragile young lady, very thin and fragile, and she would get very, very tired very quickly. As a matter of fact, there were moments when she would even pass out, and they began to kind of examine her, because she had a lot of life and she wanted to do so much, but it just seemed like it always ended in these very fragile moments of exhaustion. And so they went to doctor after doctor after doctor, and finally they went to a doctor in Louisville who said, let's look at your heart. And they discovered that her heart was out of rhythm, so bad that it wasn't pumping the blood and oxygen that she needed to sustain herself. And he said, but we have a plan. We can fix it. She said, what do we do? He said, we're going to stop your heart. Now, if you can imagine yourself, but a young teenage girl, you're going to do what? We're going to stop your heart, and we're going to let it recover, and then we're going to start it again. You see, when Jesus knelt in the garden, he looked at the Father and said, stop my heart so that they can live. Stop my heart, because I know you'll start it again. And all he wants you and I to do is stop our busy lives and understand the gift we've been given. And stop our hearts from being in the rhythm of the world and the pattern of the world, and place our heart in his control, giving ourselves away. When he drew the picture for the disciples, he was drawing a picture of the Father stopping his heart and bringing it to life again. Paul talks about it in 1 Corinthians. He said, the Lord Jesus, on the night he was betrayed, he took bread. And when he had given thanks, he broke it. And he said, this is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me. In the same way, he took the cup. And he said, this cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this often as you drink in remembrance of me. And then Paul goes on to caution us. He said, whoever therefore eats the bread or drinks the cup of the Lord is in an unworthy manner will be guilty concerning the body and the blood of the Lord. Therefore, let us examine ourselves as we eat and as we drink. We're about to share in the supper together, but we're going to do it differently than we've ever done it before. The band's going to sing a couple of songs. And I just want you at your leisure, at whatever moment you feel the Spirit prompt you, just come forward, take some bread, take some drink, pause for just a moment. Stop your heart for just a moment from beating into the rhythm of the world and let God relaunch your heart into his rhythm. Just share in that moment together. You can do it as a family. You can do it by yourself. And then just go back to your seat. Because God wants to bring a new rhythm to you. Let me show you what I mean. Take your hand and put it over your heart. Find your heartbeat. Keep it there. Don't move it. Be real quiet. Listen. Thump, 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 thump. Feel the rhythm. Feel the rhythm of your heart. Jesus says, I want to stop your heart and restart it into the life I intended for you. This morning, Jesus says, I stopped my heart for you so that you can have life. Find rhythm in me.